Hello, I'm here with Caitlin to talk about the new Secure by Design edicts. But before that, apparently we're going to the moon.
We are, and we're going to the moon relatively soon. So phys.org has an article. Let's see if I can't figure out who wrote this. It doesn't say. AFP. So it's on phys.org. I'll pull it up here for everyone. So the US is going back to the moon on January 25th. Now, what's really interesting is that this is not NASA, but essentially like a private company. So the lander is called Peregrine, and it's going to be fully automated, and it was made by Astrobotic. So what it's going to do is it's just going to land, and it's going to sort of test out some new equipment for going to the moon. But this will be the first time the U.S. has landed on the moon in 50 years, and it's going to happen on January 25th. So look forward to that, everyone.
And I noticed it's also the 48.5-year anniversary of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So that can't be a coincidence.
No, of course not.
Anyway, all right. So these researchers, let me get the, at Gizmodo has an article. Some researchers tried to test the actual IQ intelligence of AI. So they gave it some simple tasks like go to this website and look something up and things like that. And they found that they were terrible, much worse than humans. And they have a very nice conclusion at the end of this article, which says, I've argued that AI systems need to have internal models of the world that would allow them to predict the consequences of their actions and thereby allow them to reason and plan. Current LLMs do not have this ability or anything close to it, and hence are nowhere near reaching human-level intelligence. In fact, their complete lack of understanding of the physical world and lack of planning abilities puts them way below cat-level intelligence, never mind human level. And I'm really glad to see this. There's so many people pretending that AI is going to put humans out of work, and everybody that tries to actually fire humans and replace them with the current generation of AI discovers that they are terrible. They have no idea what they're doing. And we need to have a more realistic assessment of what we've got. We've got, machines that are a little smarter than the previous generation of machines, but they're nowhere up to replacing humans.
But they can help you get your work done faster. And so I do encourage people to use LLMs.
Yes.
Just like you use a computer, just like you use a word processor, just like you use a calculator.
Exactly.
In fact,
it's just the next generation of utility tools, and we should all learn it for the same reason.
Yeah, and what's really funny is that I see the same arguments about LLMs that I saw made when calculators first came out.
Right.
That
Our kids are not going to learn math anymore. They'll all just use these calculators, and then they'll all be stupid. I heard that.
Exactly. And now people are saying, oh, no one's going to learn to write anymore. They're just going to use the LLMs. And that's no, it's going to be another tool that you can use, and we're going to be more productive because of it.
Well, I have heard that actually writing with cursive script with a pen is a skill that most young kids don't have anymore because they just expect to type everything on a keyboard. And I don't know if that matters, but certain ancient things go away. Like I also understand when they click the save button and it's got that picture of a floppy disk, they say, what is that? That funny looking thing. I've never seen that.
Exactly. And you know what? Certain things should go away. There's no need for cursive. I used to write in cursive all the time, and no one could read what I wrote. So I just threw it away. And now I write in script all the time. It is a completely useless skill that I actively don't try to use.
Well, I've told you I won an award in first grade for most improved handwriting because it went from being just looking like cars had run over the paper to just looking like someone had smashed bugs on the paper. In both cases, nobody can understand anything.
Right.
And I never did get any good at it. And I'm glad to see it go away.
The only good thing about cursive is that if there was like an in-class writing assignment, and by the way, that's how you get past the LLM stuff, right? You just have your students write in class. But
if they don't know how to write with a pen,
yeah, well,
problem.
Well, they can print. But I would always get A's because none of the professors would want to read through my cursive.
A hack.
Yes.
Yeah. Well.
And then my when I switched to print, my professors were so happy that they gave me A's anyway.
Well, my grader has rebelled because my students in my management classes have to write papers. In all previous semesters, the papers were terrible. Now they're all suddenly perfect. And she said, these students aren't learning anything. I said, I don't know. They're learning to get the thing done on the job. But I think she has persuaded me to have less of those required and give them less points, since all they're doing is getting AI to write it. But I said, that's a thing they should learn, but it's probably no longer as good a measure of their success.
Right. Well, they should, like I said, if there is a writing assignment,
Yeah.
have them get a notebook, take it to class, write it out by hand in print.
No, but I don't think there's any need for them to have that skill. All they have to have, I'm trying to make sure that on the job, they will be able to write like a business letter or something that's readable. And if they use AI on the job to do it, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just like
There isn't, but they do need speaking skills, and they do need basic communication skills. And
right.
I
do have them give oral presentations, and I intend to keep that up just as much.
Good.
Yeah. But as I just see AI as like the modern super spelling checker to help you write better.
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, so Amazon is now going to offer benchmark tools to test your AI models, which I think is great. There's already something called Bedrock in Amazon, which you can use to make AIs. And then the question is, do they actually work? And Amazon is developing tools to test to see if they work, automated tools, and even human assessments of your AI tool, not exactly a pen test, but a performance test. And I think this is extremely good because now I'm consulting for companies that are trying to deploy AI, and the main concern they all have, which is entirely correct, is we don't really know how this works. We don't really know how good it is. We don't really know if we can trust it. And I think we really need some guidance. And how good is this? How does it compare to others? That sort of thing.
You cannot trust it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've come into contact with certain people in this world who believe that the earth is flat and that ChatGPT is the repository of all knowledge. And
really, you only have to ask it a few questions before you rapidly discover that is not true.
Well, if you believe the earth is flat, you don't exactly have that level of thought and
I would think you would immediately have it telling you that the earth is not flat, and you would realize how full of garbage it is. I mean,
you would think, but then of course that just means that the LLM is part of the conspiracy as well.
Well, there's that too. Yeah.
But I mean, it's very easy for those of us who, you have a PhD, and we surround ourselves with people who are critical thinkers. There are a lot of non-critical thinkers in this world who are just presented with stuff and they just sort of roll with it. They don't understand it, and that's life, and you have to think about that as part of your customer base.
Yeah. And I mean, it explains a lot of like Republicans voting for Trump and not seeing through. He just says the election was fake, and they just believe that. They don't see any need to question or have any evidence.
Nope. And a lot of, and this is true of everyone, no matter how educated you are. A lot of our opinions and a lot of our thoughts are based entirely on emotion and not logic.
Yeah,
as much as we want to pretend.
Authority. I mean, loyalty to authority is a strong thing in the Republican Party, much less in the Democratic Party. So they feel moral that they should obey their leader.
Right. And then there's a moral failing on the part of liberals that they really don't have that sort of devotion to leadership, although you could argue, maybe that's not such a good thing. Maybe that's, having that sort of devotion isn't such a good thing, but it is a moral that is lacking among liberals.
Yes, there was this great book from the guy analyzing the tribes of America where he said there were like 6 virtues and liberals only do 3 of them, and conservatives do all 6 of them. And some of the ones totally missing from liberals are like respect for authority and respect for tradition. Right. So they tend to like have religion and religious precepts and say you should just precepts and say you should just believe what the leader says. And in the liberal world, that doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, the liberals are not as moral, I mean, on a functional level, as conservatives, although, I would, a lot of people would argue, well, these aren't really good morals to begin with. So
yeah, well, I think the fundamental issue is they have a different concept of moral values. Right. So that's what really makes it bad, because in the liberal world, your moral values are like taking care of the poor people, even if they're like drug addicts or something. Yeah. And rather than condemning them for having broken the rules, you feel like you need to take care of people. And so I think both sides.
Which is so silly because now you're taking care of the world and everything's your problem. And You
Yeah,
know that.
that's
Yep.
basically socialism and liberalism,
Yep.
and just the devil take the hindmost, and you only take care of the people that deserve it is the red state thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, D-Link has a AI powered smart router, which I thought is ridiculous. You don't need a router to have AI, but they claim that the AI is used to optimize performance by adjusting the channel and dealing with interference. So that sounds like complete garbage to me. But anyway, they're trying
That
to
does
sell this thing.
that does not sound like garbage. So let
Really?
me explain why.
Yeah.
So on a very basic level, what is machine learning? And they're calling it AI, but it's machine learning. What is
Okay.
machine learning? Well, you have a function, you don't know how it works.
Right. But why do you need such a complicated function to like change channels if there's interference?
Okay, so one of the hard things is in computing that we really don't have an answer for is noise reduction and dealing with noise in general.
Oh, if it
There are a
actually
few ways of
removes the noise from the signal, then that's a job for AI, but I do not think
yes.
it's doing that.
Well, there's plenty of things that you could add to a router that if you don't know the algorithm, you can approximate the algorithm using machine learning, and that's what machine learning is like. You want an algorithm that will turn text into images.
Yeah.
No one knows how to do that programmatically using C code. So
Right.
you train a machine learning, and so you have this function that's technically possible. You don't know how it's done, so you basically find like local minimums and maximums and do your matrices and get something out. Okay,
You can
cool.
deep learn image with AI. I mean,
Yeah,
you can remove noise from things with AI. That's true.
yeah, yeah, and you can absolutely reduce noise from radio signals, Ethernet cables. Like Ethernet cables also have noise at times. You can analyze noise. You can do a lot of functions that we just currently don't know how to do
Hmm.
using straight code that you can do with machine learning. And so a lot of people think of machine learning as creating like little minds, but I think that's the wrong way of looking at machine learning. Machine learning is really about creating functions
Right.
that are technically possible, but are just too complicated or way not understood
Right.
to, you know, so
It's
that we
just
approximate them. Yeah,
it's just a linear equation that includes maybe 100 or 1,000 parameters.
right.
And
So
so that does make sense, I guess,
yeah,
if
yeah,
they could have trained it to cope with normal sources of interference until it does a good job, and it's got 100 parameters that are adjusted by learning, not by
exactly,
human planning. Yeah, that could be
exactly.
right.
So yes, so I think there is value in this, although I don't know the specifics of how it works, but that's
It
all.
would be interesting to see specs. I guess maybe if somebody should test it and see, is it really faster than other routers? And I guess it would be, maybe
Maybe
not. Depends on whether they actually got it right.
it's 90. I'm sure it's 99% marketing, but I do see value in that. That's all.
Well, good. All right. And maybe you can explain to us your AI story with the pen test muse.
Yeah, so this is something I've been waiting for ever since LLMs got popularized last year, which is red teaming LLMs, like or red teaming machine learning.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
Kaz wanted to do this, and I was pretty skeptical. Is this actually work?
I don't know, and I'm going to be trying it this weekend at CCDC invitationals. Come on, kids,
So
get
they'll be
hacked by
hacked
the
by AI. That's
yes.
we totally need to put that in the promo materials or something.
Exactly. So I'll be standing this up later tonight and seeing how this works. So I'll go over to the web browser. So this is the GitHub page for Pen Test Muse. And how does this work? I'm not entirely sure. It runs Python, and let's see, it probably runs PyTorch. I'm guessing Py. No, it doesn't. It does other stuff. Okay, but anyway, it's basically a machine learning for pen testing, and you can have it do things like run actions. Like for example, you can ask it, let's do a SQL injection, and I have this example here. Oops, of it, running SQL injection against a website for you. Like it figures it out. Not that SQL map is any.
No, but you don't have to like actually install or run SQL map. Does it automatically find the vulnerability and exploit it?
That's what I want to know. Apparently, it does tell you like what to do and how to exploit it. Yeah.
Broken object level
Oh,
authentication. Well, it sounds like it does
yeah.
a vuln scan and then maybe an automatic exploitation.
Yep.
Now
Oh
that
yeah, so it
does seem like,
identifies it and exploits it for you. So
that does seem like a step forward.
it does. Uh, Password bypass. There's also a chat mode. So if you're like, how do I, turn off Windows Defender on this system so I can get this malware uploaded, it'll help you do that. So if you can do that as well. So I will be trying this out over the weekend. We'll see how this works.
The students could be using it on CPTC.
They could, and I would recommend them doing that.
If it's actually any good. I'm very interested to hear a report of how much it actually works.
Yes, you might need a GPU to run this.
No, you need a ChatGPT API key.
You do.
Yeah.
No, what does it say that?
Yes. So it's not running locally. You have to have open API key. So it's just using API calls to ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, set open API key. You're correct.
Which makes sense. I mean, that then you don't have to run anything locally.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, you set that up. Yeah. And yeah, I'll be trying out this weekend. So, but this is, yeah, I've been waiting for something like this for a while. So yeah.
If it works, it's very exciting.
Yeah, we'll see if it works.
All right. Well, there's a new vulnerability called logo fail, which I think is pretty incredible. It turns out that when you boot up a computer, at the early splash screen, it can put up a picture of your logo, and therefore there are image handling process code inside the boot up sequence of your machine. And that stuff is notoriously vulnerable. And they found it's been vulnerable for a long time and nobody caught it. Originally, it would only put up bitmaps, but now they expanded it to a whole bunch of other formats like GIF and JPEG and PCX. And of course, those handlers are garbage. So it's all full of vulnerability. So what this means is you can bypass secure boot and run other kinds of code during the boot process. And this is something I'm constantly hearing on Pulse Security podcast, is that the whole secure boot thing is not as secure as you think at all. And it's really hard to control malicious activity during the boot up process, where it just tends to load code and run it arbitrarily with high privileges without any possibility of testing it. So it seems like this might really be important. And I'm hearing about exploitation using malicious bootloaders increasing, just like exploiting your edge devices, like your network routers, is increasing. So these weak spots that we've known about for 10 years, and I said, well, nobody would really attack that. People are really attacking it now. And we really need to add some kind of defense to it. So I think that's actually a pretty important vulnerability.
The problem, though, is that that's going to be highly dependent upon the BIOS.
Yep.
So you would have to you can't just run things on Windows or Linux. You would have to identify the manufacturer of the motherboard, right, identify the version of the BIOS, find the bug in that BIOS, and then run it. And so unless this is a very targeted attack, I don't think it's ever going to get to the point where the average person needs to worry about this.
Well, the one thing I've been waiting for 10 years is the logical conclusion that the people to target with this are the Apple users, because they really do all have exactly the same hardware.
Yes.
And exactly the same software, unlike Windows users. So you should be able to make a worm that takes over a whole bunch of iPhones or Macs with this kind of thing.
Yep.
It hasn't happened yet, but they would seem to be the logical target.
I will say I do enjoy malware development on Mac OS over Windows. Like, Microsoft does such a good job of defending Windows nowadays. And unfortunately, it has this long history of being insecure that Microsoft has really tried to rectify. But Apple hasn't. Apple has been resting on the laurels that no one uses Macs, so no one gets hacked, and that's good enough for them.
Yeah, and their defenses are pretty rudimentary because they just haven't had to develop them.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go back to you with this headline, which I think exaggerates the problem, but let's see.
Well, it's a bit exaggerated, but not that much. So this is from Ars Technica by Beth Mull. And the FDA is complaining because a few companies are mixing brake cleaner with their hand sanitizer, which is apparently a no-no for some reason.
Well, I object. As far as I can tell, they're not actually doing that.
Well, they are. So what's happening is that a bunch of these companies are using facilities designed to make or process brake cleaner and using it to make hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And therefore brake cleaner stuff is getting mixed in with the hand sanitizer.
Well,
And
that
that's
is
what,
the part.
yeah,
That's the part I object to. They never actually demonstrated that there was any contamination in the hand sanitizer. They just said you're not using a separate vessel like you're supposed to.
right. But it is a clear violation of manufacturing standards for sure, though.
It's a procedural violation, but they failed to demonstrate actual harm. They failed to demonstrate that the actual product has the contamination in it.
Right. But if you remember during the early days of COVID-19,
Yeah.
you know, stuff getting into hand sanitizers as people were rushing to make them was a real problem.
I didn't
So,
know that, but
yeah. Yeah. So as people were, as there was this huge influx of needing, you know, like hand sanitizer,
which in
uh,
fact would not protect you from COVID and was not worth doing.
it was not worth doing, but everyone wanted it.
Yeah.
But yeah, a bunch of them had like methanol in it,
Oh yeah.
and a few other things too, which were no good. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So I this is obviously, you know, a bit exaggerated, but still,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Well,
you know,
they did get
companies
punished
stop
for it.
mixing brake cleaner into your hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did get punished, and apparently we're not doing it right. So I mean, it's not too ridiculous, but
Yeah.
all right. Anyway, I this one I thought was the most important one. CISA has published an article exhorting manufacturers to be secure by design with some amazing, wonderful plans, which make sound great. What they say is instead of just making products with like insecure defaults, go all the way. Not only don't allow insecure defaults, but have your product notice, for example, if the web interface is connected to actually to the internet, and disable the product. Make it so your product will not run when configured insecurely. And make it so the only way to configure it that way is to go through special warning pages and say, I understand the risk or something. This is, I think, a really brilliant idea and a giant leap forward. There's nothing that does this. And Kaz's talk last week revealed how much Kubernetes is full of insecure defaults. Almost all the vulnerabilities he talked about are leftover Amazon insecure defaults. And, you know,
Yep.
this really is, I remember when Microsoft switched from making their server insecure by default to making it secure by default, where everything is blocked unless you turn it on. And this is a brilliant idea, I think, if you can get people to do it, where the product will actually shut down and say, no, you can't run it this way. You configured it wrong. We'll see if anybody actually does it, but it is an interesting recommendation.
Yeah.
And the last one, my sister pointed out to me, I didn't know this. There's a Find Starlink site. So you can see when the Starlink satellites are going over above and when you should walk out to see them, which I didn't know. I thought it was cool. She told me she was going out to see them in Milwaukee, and I checked, but you couldn't see them in San Francisco that day. But this way you can easily find out whether there's some to look for. So that might be fun.
So there's so many Starlink satellites. If you really want to find one, get a pair of binoculars, point them straight up, and within like 5 minutes, you will find some little dot moving across the sky. Like they're all over the place.
Yeah, well, I got to go out and find the ISS too one of these days.
That's very easy. That's
Yeah.
looks like an airplane just sort of flying overhead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, I think that's it for this one. And I'll have another one on Tuesday.